Well, thanks, Joe, and good afternoon and welcome to the 126th regular meeting of the Executive Board. So for the past 10 years, you heard us say about that ALPA finances are strong, and you heard us talk about conservative budgeting even while our industry was thriving. We've encouraged fiscal responsibility and saving for a rainy day. Unfortunately, that day has arrived, and now we're going to have to put our practices to an even tougher test. But even with the upheaval in the industry and all the uncertainties surrounding us as we work our way through this public health and economic crisis, our past work has positioned us with the opportunity to come out on the other side of this stronger. We learned a hard lesson after 9/11 and the bankruptcy era. Many of us still feel that pain and have the scars to show for it. So we've changed, we've adapted, and we are stronger and smarter. Since those times, ALPA has become leaner, more judicious, and more efficient. That has carried us through the good times, and that will carry us through what we are all facing today. I believe all the hard work you and your pilot volunteers have done over the past decade, and more recently, has made it possible to weather this storm. Our planning has given us an ability to be nimble and adjust. And I'm optimistic about where we stand as we face these current challenges together. I'd like to now show you some numbers and discuss where we stand today. We finished 2019 with our consolidated revenue outpacing our expenses, which yielded a surplus of more than $75 million. As always, as you can see here, salaries and flight pay loss are our two greatest expenses. We were optimistic that 2020 was going to be the same or even better, but we planned and budgeted conservatively anyway. This slide shows us where we are through April 30th of this year. Pre-COVID, we were in a strong financial position, which included higher than expected profit sharing payments, and we were well on our way to match or exceed the 2019 results. Financial results as of this morning show continued positive trend, allowing us to continue to save. This next series of slides will show you where we are as of May 31st. As I mentioned to you in the past, during budgeting process, we conservatively estimate dues revenue. This slide shows how the actual dues revenue, even with the effects of COVID starting to creep into the industry, has outpaced the estimates on a monthly basis. Note the much higher expected dues income in February due to very good profit sharing payments. Even when you look at cumulative dues on a year-to-date basis, our actual dues remain higher than our expected, our budgeted dues. But this story has two parts. On the spending side, our actual expenses month to month have come in lower than budgeted expenses for 4 out of the past 5 months. And again, when you look at the cumulative expenses, our actual expenses through the first 5 months fall significantly below our budgeted expenses. Our costs are down in part because we have not been traveling or holding the meetings that we anticipated would happen. For instance, we've canceled many internal events like the Legislative Summit and the Air Safety Forum, and moved many of our other meetings, like this one, to a virtual platform. This removes travel costs, hotel costs, and reduces flight pay loss. Reducing that expense combined with the other expenses mentioned has been the biggest contributing factor, allowing us to stay under our budget. We've taken other steps to address any potential issues this year as well. The other national officers and I have spent many hours on the phone together, looking at our situation and discussing our options. We've worked with our staff, subject matter experts, and talked to many of you to find out our best way forward. And I'm confident we've come up with a start to a great plan. During the 2019 budgeting process, we had a $12 million surplus that the Executive Council decided, as has been done in the past few years, to use to continue the growth of our major contingency fund. For our budgeting process, 1/12 of that amount was earmarked to be put into the MCF each month of 2020. While the January deposit did take place, We could see that the COVID issue was picking up steam in February. I asked that subsequent deposits be held back and more easily accessible until we could better evaluate our financial situation. With the concurrence of the Executive Council, we've been holding that money and will reevaluate it in August. All of these things together have let us maintain the status quo this year. Obviously, the longer things go on, the more we will be affected next year and beyond. As I said earlier, we expect our dues revenue to be reduced nearing the end of this year, and next year's budget is going to be much tighter. But we will remain flexible and continue our realistic conservative approach, and we will collectively get through this unexpected downturn. Typically, we would have already started the 2020 budgeting process, but with so much uncertainty, we moved the due date for submission of all budgets to July 7th, with the budget review meetings to take place over the following 2 weeks. Toward the end of July, we will finalize our revenue projection and produce the budget proposal for the Executive Council. We're still targeting the August Executive Council meeting as the budget meeting. We won't truly know until all airlines make their decisions exactly how dues will be affected next year. So we're all going to remain flexible, continually monitor the situation, and be prepared to make adjustments. In preparation for the anticipated reduction in dues, however, I've asked each department and committee within the administrative and support account to submit a budget that represents a 30% reduction from last year, not including staff costs. I look forward to our discussions in the coming weeks. With the hard work of our dedicated finance team, we will get to a place that will create a workable budget within our revenue, but will also continue to provide the highest level of services for our pilots. I wanted to take a moment to thank the staff for all the work over the past few months. Through everything that's gone on, their work has remained at the same consistently high level we've all come to expect. I haven't felt a single hiccup since we transitioned to working remotely in March, and it's truly a testament to their abilities and to their professionalism. I'd also like to thank the members of the SAFER Committee, consisting of Mike Arcamuzzi, Bill Bartels, Claude Baraglia, Sean Creed, Rick Meyer, Joe Youngerman, and Mike Hamilton, as well as several key staff members from both finance and legal. We've been continuing our assigned work to bring our financial policies up to date. And while some of the suggested changes have been put on hold in light of the current times, we do have a few proposals that we're going to ask you to consider at this meeting. More information will be provided in Delegate Committee 2, but I will go over them briefly. The first change we are recommending as a committee is an increase in the allowable group meal expenses from $75 per person to $100 per person, with no spouses allowed unless pre-approved. In addition, the requirement for an itemized receipt will be emphasized. Secondly, we're recommending that we update our recognitions policy in Section 60 to encourage other types of awards other than plaques, such as photos and pens. This not only reduces the expenses in creating and shipping plaques, but also provides a variety in how MEC or LECs can recognize a member. Next, we suggest a language change that would require any merger funds to be held in an ALPA recognized financial institution, where the money will still be controlled by the MEC, but for audit, accounting, and reporting purposes, ALPA National will have better access. Finally, we also suggest a clarification of Section 60 prohibiting the use of flight pay laws charged to the LEC budget. This will be discussed in more detail in Delegate Committee. As I previously reported, SAFER has also been looking at new uses for the MCF. Our current balance is more than $95 million. As you can see by this slide, the major contingency fund has been on an upward slope ever since ALPA decided to prioritize its recapitalization in 2015. We've also recapitalized the OCF, bringing it up from a near zero to 2008 to a strong and healthy $31.5 million today. It's been a steady increase thanks to our conservative budgeting. In fact, the only dip you'll see is in 2017 due to a movement of funds from the OCF to the MCF. Finding new uses for the MCF was one of the original charges for SAFER. The committee spent a good amount of time discussing this issue and came up with what I consider a novel idea. Currently, MECs can only use these funds in the final stages of negotiations and only when MEC funds are exhausted. The committee felt that situations could arise both during the negotiations and after an agreement has been reached that can leave an MEC with limited funds. We felt that prior to a deal, if an MEC reaches an impasse and ends up in an arbitration or conciliation in Canada, or given a TRO, MCF funds should be made available to allow them to fund the P2P, SPSC, and family awareness. These funds would come with the same requirements as before, but would be available much earlier. Typically, after a deal is done, there will be the inevitable disagreements over language with the company that may lead to grievances. These battles would have to be fought when the MEC funds are potentially depleted. So the suggestion was to use the MCF to provide 3 positions for 1 year to aid in the process. We had anticipated putting this to a vote at this meeting, but with the current uncertainty, I have asked the Executive Council to rescind their approval, and I will give a status update in August. But I wanted to mention it not only to update the work of SAFER and the Executive Council, but to highlight the innovative thinking this committee has did and the great work that continues to come from this group of engaged ALPA volunteers and staff. I'd like to shift gears a bit and step outside of my normal role. While this work that I get to do every day is something I truly enjoy, there are other areas of ALPA that I follow with great interest. As some of you may know, prior to my flying career, I worked in the mental health field, and so pilot assistance and pilot well-being are near and dear to my heart, and I believe they are the heart of what this union stands for. I've spent several years in a comfy chair saying things like, what do you think about that? And that's about all the time we have today. So I know that the work of people like Dr. Quay Schneider from AMAS, John Taylor, Travis Ludwig, and Ellen Brinks at the national level, Suzanne Kalfas as our ALPA staff attorney, and all the PA volunteers on the MEC and LEC levels have done to continue to do for the work for our pilots who are struggling through these difficult times has been nothing short of amazing and critically important. I know from experience that the stresses of your flying job on top of your volunteer jobs during difficult times can build, and you find yourself wandering around the house at all hours of the night thinking and trying to solve the problems of the world. It's important to remember you need to find time to relax, decompress, and if necessary, ask for help. I know you're all doing great, and I want you to continue to do so. So to wrap this up, we spent the last decade building our resources for a time just like this. Hundreds of our volunteers over the past decade focus on both their present and the future. And because of that, our present is going to remain much closer to normal. There are no guarantees what the coming months might bring. As I said earlier, I'm optimistic we're in a good place financially, but no one knows what else might happen. But I can tell you this, we've put ourselves in the best position possible to take on whatever may come our way and to continue to serve our 63,000 pilots. And on that note, that's about all the time we have today. Thank you.